Thank you for your time as you view my presentation. I will be discussing predicting successful outcomes in elementary reading education during synchronous virtual instruction for EDUC 630. My name is Jessica Schneider, and I will be guiding you through this presentation. I was inspired to research this topic because I teach reading online in a synchronous virtual setting, and I wanted to know more about my craft. I knew there was more research out there, but I just needed to find it. In this paper, I will talk about general successes for virtual instruction, as well as failures in virtual learning to provide context for virtual reading instruction. I'll conclude with predictors of success as defined by the literature to cover an array of markers of achievement, such as reading fluency, graduation rates, enrollment rates, and parent satisfaction. I'll share specific tools educators can use when teaching reading online to promote success in future lessons. I hope this literature review has added to the general body of knowledge by providing thoughtful strategies for virtual educators culled by other researchers. First, general successes in virtual education. Several studies and meta-analysis have shown that distance learning is as effective as in-person learning. This is taken to mean that today's distance learning is the same as its predecessors, with satellite-linked classrooms using webcams and projector monitors. But is today's distance learning the same as virtual learning? Today, each student has their own computer and headset. We have more online tools now than we did at the beginning of distance learning, so the format looks very different. This is an area that may require more research. Overall, there is a high parental satisfaction for cyber schools. This could be due to parental proximity to the student during school hours, as the parent can see exactly what the student is studying, or enhanced communication between teachers and parents. Digital enrollment is consistent, indicating that it is a successful route for many students, approximately 145,000 annually, except for the 2019-2020 school year when enrollment jumped to over 300,000. In Idaho, public virtual charter school IDEA has a graduation rate that's 10% higher than brick-and-mortar classrooms. Their stringent teacher selection process and frequent communication home to involve families were cited as reasons for success. Students connect with teachers during synchronous sessions in this school. It's difficult to have success without failure, and virtual instruction is no different. During the COVID-19 school closures, they were a mess because they happened overnight. Teachers had no idea what to expect, and each district seemed to take its own unique course of action. Teachers didn't have any training for virtual teaching, and this training was key for many teachers who had never taught over Zoom before. Meanwhile, virtual schools that were already established experienced higher enrollments as parents sought the most consistent, or in some cases convenient, educational solution that they could find. It is notable that these enrollments during this period included fewer non-white and students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds during this period as compared to before the pandemic. K-12 Incorporated, the largest private educational provider, claims to have great successes, but that data could not be found. Instead, I discovered that K-12 Inc. has a dismal graduation rate and poor AYP performance. Only 27.4% of K-12 Incorporated cyber schools met annual year performance in 2010 to 2011, compared to 51.8% of brick-and-mortar schools. Doyle and Cruz found that enrolled students lost an average of 72 days of reading instruction per year. This is an astounding loss that absolutely could affect AYP. Virtual access remains an issue, with data from USA Facts indicating that only 7% of students always have internet access and 8% always have access to a computer. This means that access to a virtual education is not equitable at this time. One of the problems I encounter during research is the dearth of research on virtual reading instruction. This is reflective of the general newness of virtual education, but I consider it a failure nonetheless. Finally, some predictors of success in reading. Lucan et al. Found that the steep learning curve virtual educators faced during COVID-19 disruptions exists for students too. In this 2015 study, it took students 3 years to catch up to brick-and-mortar peers, at which time they surpassed their brick-and-mortar peers in all areas of achievement studied. This was a significant gain in both math and reading. During the first 2 years, students saw losses across both math and reading, though the losses were not as great during the second year. This progression suggests that the longer a student is enrolled in virtual learning, the better they do. This also suggests that longitudinal studies will be of great value when assessing virtual education. Use of evidence-based practices is always good practice in education and related fields. I will provide a list of resources that can be used with evidence-based practices later in this presentation. Students must have access to the internet and virtual school to be able to attend. Internet access must become as routine a utility as water or electric in all households, plus adequate enrollment space should be made available for virtual learning, so it will be more equitable for all learners. During the pandemic, hotspots were made available through both libraries and schools, which I see as a win since the programs did connect more students to school. This also led to internet subsidization, which helped Americans to connect online as well. Perhaps unsurprisingly, self-regulation is a predictor for literacy success. Self-regulation is the ability to regulate one's emotions, feelings, and behavior. Researchers at the University of Virginia used PALS data, a standardized and normed early literacy test, to examine student success in reading as measured by higher scores on PALS compared to self-regulation skills. The students who entered kindergarten with better self-regulation did better on PALS at the end of first grade as compared to students with poor self-regulation skills who scored lower on PALS. This early period of elementary school is critical for the development of reading skills to ensure success in all other subjects, as well as the development of higher order reading skills in later grades. And now for some specific strategies. First, we'll talk about the learning environment. As in any classroom, set intentions for your learning environment. Think about how you will engage your learners. How will you maintain their focus and attention? What visual cues will you give them? What cues do you need to have ready before the lesson? Which ones will you create with students during the lesson? And how will you do that? During virtual learning, you should praise students more often. They're facing extra challenges initially, and they need your support and encouragement. The virtual setting places a geographic boundary between teacher and students. Use more excitement than usual to help overcome the fact that you're not by their side. Consider a discussion board or chat feature to connect with students, especially if they are withdrawn. Another specific strategy that you can use are instructional methods. One instructional method is explicit instruction. And this is vital for most students. Now, for example, for word work, you may only take 6 to 8 minutes of the lesson, but it might take place on a virtual whiteboard instead of a physical whiteboard or on a worksheet. A lesson might be prepared in Google Slides with objects that can be manipulated by students to fill in blanks, correctly identify usage of a word, or show a relationship between word and picture for lower elementary students. The teacher can take screenshots of student work or their own presentation of the lesson for students and email them to parents for follow-up, either for homework assignments or clarity. Methods and materials do matter. Materials include a computer and internet connection, applicable software, and, quote, cognitive and executive functioning skills, reasoning, processing information, working memory, physical or sensory concerns, reading ability, and the ability to use assistive technologies, according to Yamaguchi in 2021. Epic Books can be a great resource for teaching reading online, as well as Newsela and readingatoz.com. The Google Suite can be exceptionally useful for its collaboration tools. Scratch Planet, a project from MIT, allows students to make animated videos for free that could be used to show a summary or alternate ending to a story. StoryboardThat.com allows students to storyboard a story, which could also be used in writing instruction. Students could use Screencastify or other video recording tools to record their reaction to stories or share discussion post answers instead of typing them out. Younger students could even reply to each other in video format if the discussion board is set up to post videos. Active learning has been linked to higher retention of information. Getting students to interact in any class can be a challenge, but in virtual, it's essential for student success. Students can answer questions about stories, make predictions, and make up alternate endings. Teachers can direct students to websites to build story maps, or even assign an old-fashioned diorama with a virtual presentation. Another important strategy is connecting to home. In Zooming into Summer, Key Takeaways from a Virtual Summer Reading Intervention by Washburn et al., teachers provided to-go bags with materials such as manipulatives, reading logs, a headset with microphone and other tools, as well as hotspots to connect with students. This contact proved crucial for the participation of many students in their reading lessons. Teachers also made sure that parents would be available to help with tech support during lessons. Also during this study, the teachers used the Talking Points app to connect with parents that use the parents' preferred method of contact. The app also provides basic translation services. The takeaway from this study and others is that ongoing communication between home and school is crucial for student success. Newsletters, weekly emails, and daily progress reports are all traditional ways to communicate home. Older students could fill out an exit ticket in a Google form asking about a class, which could then be shared with parents via Google Share. This could also be an opportunity for students to reflect on their learning. Yet another successful strategy for virtual learning is social-emotional learning. Now, addressing social-emotional learning can be difficult, but rewarding. Self-regulation, specifically, is the ability to regulate one's emotions, feelings, and behavior. Perhaps unsurprisingly, children with better self-regulation perform better on reading evaluations. Kehoe et al. In 2021 found that children who entered kindergarten at high risk for reading failure but exhibited strong self-regulation skills exceeded the reading benchmark in first grade. The only exception were the students in the lowest quartiles in a sample already identified as at risk. Younger students may need scaffolding to support the development of their self-regulation. Reward charts and other parts of a classroom management plan can be used to support younger learners as they transition towards greater independence. Virtual learning provides unique opportunities for students with a disability. In their own environment, students can control room temperature, whether to bring water to class, whether to use a text reader in class or not, and use the chat feature of many virtual classrooms to connect with peers and teachers. Many students with disabilities report that virtual learning allows them to work at their own pace, which would be an IEP accommodation in brick-and-mortar schools. It is important to note that many states offer no guidance on the implementation of the federally mandated IEP in the virtual setting. Content should be streamlined to reduce visual and mental clutter for students with disabilities. Teachers can open and close modules so that only relevant content is seen by students within the learning management system. The framework of the Universal Design for Learning, which is an accessibility tool, should be used when possible. This framework includes alt text for blind students, text readers, guidelines on color and contrast, and more. Next, reducing cognitive load gives students less to focus on, so they can focus on what is really important in the lesson. This is consistent with Vygotsky's zones of proximal development. Teachers can achieve this by keeping the virtual learning area free from clutter and extra visuals. Focus on what is most important during each phase of the lesson. Virtual learning gives students with disabilities the opportunity to quietly send a message to an instructor, which may not be possible in brick-and-mortar schools. This can reduce embarrassment and frustration and increase students' questions to teachers. And finally, students with disabilities can customize their notifications within the learning management system, so they always receive a notification when a new module or assignment is published, or even sync their online calendar with the personal calendar on their phone to streamline their planning. Teachers, this slide and the next slide are just for you. This is a list of the resources for teaching online that I came across in my literature review. The first is Universal Design for Learning Framework. This is not an app that you plug in or a tool that you can pull out of a toolbox. This is a framework, and it includes guidelines on structuring lessons or papers or a visual. It gives guidelines on color schemes and contrasts and that sort of thing. So it's more than just one tool. It's actually a framework. The second strategy is to reduce cognitive load for students with disabilities and only open relevant assignments in a learning management system. Now, if you're doing this for the entire class, this also benefits students who might be borderline at risk or maybe didn't quite qualify for students, and they still get a reduced cognitive load, which helps them as well. You can reduce visual clutter. Make sure there aren't any extra visuals. Consider using discussion boards to engage students and real-time chat features to get feedback from students who may not otherwise participate in class. Virtual whiteboards can be useful for creating anchor charts with students as you go. StoryboardThat.com is a free resource that students can use to storyboard a story or perhaps prepare for a writing assignment. And the Talking Points app was cited by Washburn et al. As a helpful tool for communication between parents and teachers. Teachers, please feel free to take a screenshot of this slide if you'd like. Teachers, please feel free to take a screenshot of this slide as well if it's helpful for you. These are more resources for teaching online that I found in my research. Flipgrid is a great way to get students involved if they're not talking online or if they're not typing into the chat. It creates video and the students can interact with each other using video. So instead of a written response, you could elicit a video response. You can consider emailing anchor charts to students and parents to get parents involved and to help them understand what their children are learning. Digital reward charts work the same as regular reward charts and sticker charts and all of those behavior management tools. You can take them online. Just make the digital copy, post it on your screen. You can make it part of your background if you'd like. And consider digital rewards, such as 2 minutes of a preferred video or book for maybe 15 minutes of work, if that's how you have to structure it. You can create a handout about internet subsidization programs or reduction in cost for internet for low-income individuals, as well as hotspot programs to help students connect to school. And you can develop a digital communication notebook for students who may need more communication for home to school, and this can be done in a Google Doc. In conclusion, virtual learning can be effective, and we can learn from failures. Early research has indicated that distance learning can be as effective as brick-and-mortar schools. District charter schools show high performance, but private educational corporations do not show these levels of achievement. Failures are learning opportunities. Next, teachers need time and practice to effectively lead a virtual classroom, just as teachers need practice before leading an in-person class. In-person teachers share many skills as virtual teachers. As with in-person learning, connecting to home is crucial for student success, especially when families need equipment like hotspots to connect to school. And due to a dearth of literature, more research is needed in virtual reading education and virtual education in general. Thank you for watching my presentation. Please feel free to leave your questions in the comment section and I'll be sure to answer them.